my life I've barely spoken. Your words have been so broken. I've been under your hypnosis. Why did I sip that potion? I'm so done with.
All right, welcome back to Vagrant Sam. Today we're going to be looking at the bushfires and using the lens of the Australian Christian lobby as a reference point to respond to some of the information that's going out there. So without any further ado, Martyn Iles, please take it away, buddy.
Now this is serious, it's tragic, it's massive, and it rates up there with the most severe fire seasons that we have had in Australia in key respects. But I want to sound a note of caution around the totally unprecedented language because, I think that's used because it suggests a certain thing, particularly about climate change, and it's a helpful thing to people who want to push a particular political narrative, but it doesn't make it accurate. Take, for example, the prediction that this fire season will see about 30 million hectares in total burnt area in the nation of Australia. Well, last fire season, on a national scale, there was about 55 million hectares of burnt area.
So for this particular video, I am looking at actually focusing on the specific claims about climate change, rather than this initial narrative that the bushfires aren't quite as bad as we think they are, because we've always had bad bushfires in Australia. I haven't actually focused the video on this, so I don't have the facts and figures, but one thing I do want to point out is that here we have a setting where this particular point of view is being pushed as being reasonable, as being grounded, as being rational, while the point of view for the people that are raising concerns about the bushfires and the potential role climate change took in them are being marked off as hysterical and basically not using facts to support their claims. So maybe there's something interesting there. I'll do a little bit of digging, and I might do a follow-up video where I compare the scale of the fires and how bad this bushfire season has been, and maybe do a bit of fact-checking on some of these numbers. It's about the third time I've listened to this video, and it's the first time I've sort of maybe thought about those numbers a little bit, because I feel like they're not accurate, or at least they're not being interpreted correctly. But let's crack on.
Now, New South Wales, let's look at that state. And in New South Wales, with about 5 million burnt hectares, that in fact is right up there with the worst we've seen for New South Wales. And in that respect, these fires have no precedent that I've been able to find in roughly the last 150 years, or maybe as much as 200 years, that we've really been able to observe this stuff.
So he's broken them down by state, found that New South Wales is literally unprecedented, and then warned us against using the term unprecedented because it's counter to his specific narrative here, which is that they are not unprecedented.
Climate change has nothing to do with these fires. Is that what I'm trying to argue? And of course, I'm not trying to argue that. Not at all.
All right, now, so let's watch very carefully for the shifting of the goalposts now that he's seeded the climate change issue, in a broad sense anyway.
I have no problem whatsoever with claims that a changing climate is very slowly and gradually and incrementally contributing to, on average, worse fire conditions. That's a claim that I'm completely open to, and it doesn't threaten anything that I believe whatsoever. But to claim that it is the dominant factor, or to claim that it's created an unprecedented fire season overall, or that it's caused, or to use these catastrophic conditions to, actually make particularly young people who haven't experienced a long period of time of Australia's weather patterns to be really afraid about what's happening to the climate and to live in fear over it, those things are completely wrong.
If anyone, any organisation or any ideology should be criticised for causing young people to live in fear, I think that Christianity would be pretty high up on the stakes there. So glass houses, and maybe, just maybe, have a little bit of self-awareness when you're criticising people for doing the exact same thing that your religion almost bases its growth pattern on, and that is making sure people are afraid for their souls, so they'll give you 10% of their income before tax.
The causes of these fires are drought, excessive fuel loads, arsonists, climate change, if you like, and something called the Australian fire season, which comes along every single year.
So here we're given 5 causes for the bushfire season, and climate change is listed as one of them. I would put forward to you, out of the 5 that Mr. Iles here has mentioned, the bushfire season is being increased in terms of how long it occurs for because of climate change. Droughts are becoming more frequent and more severe because of climate change. And the fuel load, because of increasing temperatures, actually becomes drier and combusts more easily and spreads more easily thanks to climate change. So while climate change is only one of his listed factors, it interacts with 3 of his other 5 factors, meaning that his list kind of supports the idea that climate change is a significant risk when it comes to addressing the bushfire season in Australia. It's a good start. It's a strong start after all those facts and figures and the gish gallop of, hectares burnt and people lost and houses burnt, which, you know what, I am going to have a closer look at those claims. But let's carry on with the climate science for the rest of the video.
Can we stop climate change? The answer is no.
We can stop climate change. That's part of settled climate science, and that's why when people study the climate and the changes that are being caused by humans, anthropogenic climate change, they actually make recommendations on how we can slow and hopefully stop the changes that we're bringing upon our planet. So no, this is literally wrong and literally demonstrates that you don't actually understand climate change, and all you're doing is adjusting your narrative to be more palatable by going, yes, climate change exists, and then being very specific about not accepting our role in it or our effect that we can have through either changing our behavior or at least making political decisions that, help the climate rather than hurt the climate, and disregarding or dismissing the role that we have as people in affecting the climate and the ability that we have to slow and hopefully stop the changes is disingenuous, is damaging, and is frankly really anti-Christian behavior, because I thought Christians were meant to be caretakers of the world.
If you were to destroy Australia, wipe it off the face of the planet so that it never existed again, and you and I were gone and this whole nation had disappeared, it wouldn't make one jot of difference to the climate. All those emissions that we gave up would be taken up by China within just over a week.
China! Of course, here we go. The other industrial nations that are catching up in the developed world, because of them, Australia doesn't have a responsibility or an obligation to act in good faith when it comes to being stewards of the environment and the resources that we are stewards of. We're not stewards of the resources in China, and we also are meant to be leaders when it comes to international policy and influencing others to hopefully do better as well. Although one thing I will point out very specifically is that we actually have a carbon emission per capita that is more than double what China is. While we are only 0.3% of the world's population, we emit 1.1% of the carbon annually. So regardless of what anyone else is doing, we are definitely providing more than our fair share when it comes to carbon emissions, which is one of the most direct reasons for climate change and the changing environment. So abdicating our responsibility because China does put out a huge proportion of emissions in the world is something that is passing the buck and not responsible in terms of our own government or our own people or our own place in this world. The fact is that if countries on a whole don't take positive action against climate change, there'll be never any pressure put on the developing nations to make sure they follow us in terms of adopting more carbon neutral or lower carbon emitting technologies or practices. And countries like Australia have the potential to be great actors when it comes to renewables and developing renewable energy. And the key thing here is, while places like China and India certainly are high emitters at the moment, it's just an economic solution that we need to find and that we're in a position to find because we're such a great, innovative country. And if we work on getting investment into renewables, those technologies can actually be cheaper than coal. And once that type of technology becomes cheaper, it will get adopted by other countries because it's all about money. It's all about the bottom dollar. And in that way, we can actually help countries like China and India emit less by us being innovative and us being at the forefront of these lower emission renewable technologies, instead of going, hey, they're not going to change their ways, so let's just keep burning coal anyway. I don't want us as Australians to be followers when it comes to carbon emission. I want us to be leaders. And I think that's reflected in the fact that most Australians want us to do better. They want our government to do better when it comes to climate change policy and investment in renewables.
Now, can we stop excessive fuel loads? There is a huge contributing cause to the ferocity of many of these fires. And the answer is yes, of course we can. That's amongst the easiest things we can do. It requires personnel and money, and it can be done. The state of Victoria, for example, I looked up the figures, and it managed to complete barely 50% of its hazard reduction target through backburning this last year. A similar figure the year before that. In fact, it's been about 5 years since they actually met their hazard reduction target. Now, yes, there have been instances where that's because of protests. So I think it's Noa or Noa. Tell me in the comments how you say that, I don't know. But it's in East Gippsland, and there was that story that the ABC in East Gippsland deleted off their Facebook page because locals were protesting the backburning there, and it seems that actually stopped the backburning in that local area just recently, in fact in 2019, just last year. And so there have been isolated instances of that, but on the whole it has to do with conditions and broader factors. So, there's a complexity there, but is that an issue? Yes, it's an issue.
So we've got the red herring again. The protesters are the ones that are a factor in reducing the backburning effort that is undertaken by the fire and emergency services around Australia. And right at the end, he acknowledges that the backburning conditions are not always there. Why is that? It's because with global warming or climate change, the conditions are rarer and the window for backburning is shorter because we actually get more rain as a result of climate change, and we get more and severer droughts. So the land is too wet for backburning on one side, it's too hot and dry for backburning on the other, and it risks spreading and being out of control. Whereas when it's too wet, it actually isn't effective because there's not enough burning going on. It doesn't consume enough fuel for when the conditions are dry to actually have the desired outcome. And so again, he's bringing up points against his own position because he doesn't understand the complexity of climate change and exactly how it affects a wide range of factors within our environment.
It's a form of madness, absolute or maybe just emotionalism. I don't know what it is, but it's completely unhinged from reality to say that our government can change the temperature conditions of Australia because they can't.
There it is, the completely unrelated and made-up word that ends in ism. We have emotionalism, which I presume is just a belief that emotions are the key thing to focus your ideology around. Don't know. I don't think I've ever heard that word before, so we'll just presume that all it is there to do is to try and disenfranchise the very real and very emotional response people are having to the fact that they're feeling frustrated that climate change isn't being addressed to the extent that they believe is our responsibility here in Australia. So let's see what else he's got to say. I think we're getting close to the end here.
But unprecedented, careful how we use that language. And so I would say this really, I think at this stage what we need to do is advocate for sensible policy responses and also pray for rain. This isn't a segment about drought, but it's closely related. But like the Millennium Drought, which was happening in Queensland as I was growing up and elsewhere around the country, I recall Wivenhoe Dam, the major water source for Brisbane, was down below 20%. But that drought ended, and this one will as well. God has promised seed time and harvest, summer and winter, cold and heat, day and night shall not cease, so long as the earth remains.
And so there we have it. God is in control of the seasons, and this is all just part of the natural order of things, and there's no need to worry because, hey, God is in control. It's probably not ironic, but it does tickle me that is the way he decided to end the climate change discussion that he's having around the bushfires. So yeah, a whole load of old garbage. Divesting responsibility from us as humans for human-caused climate change and telling people not to worry because it'll all be fine and God is in control. And let's pray for rain, shall we? Which, hey, we've already started into the wet season. It's threatening rain today, and it's been raining fairly consistently here in Brisbane anyway. Probably not the most important place for rain to land in order to ensure that the fires don't come back. But yeah. Right, we're going to end it there. I just had a couple of kids on scooters ask if I was vlogging and what my YouTube channel was. And I don't know if it's super kid friendly, but hey, it's pretty funny. So thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. If you didn't like the video, there's another button for that down below. Leave me a comment, let me know what you thought, let me know what you think of Martyn Iles. It kind of strikes me odd that Christians, when it comes to pollution and looking after the planet, they clearly didn't see this guy when they were kids. They saw this guy and thought, hey, that's the way to go. Yeah, so anyway, I'll catch you guys next time. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, share, like, do all the things, and I'll see you all next week.